Hey, friends, welcome back to another episode of Space for Life. My special guest today probably needs no introduction for those who have been in the Richmond, Virginia area for any number of years. My special guest, Rob Ukrop, is been a mainstay in the Richmond area in so many different fronts. His family is certainly kind of one of the prominent families in Richmond, Virginia. The Ukrop family, founders of Ukrop's grocery stores for many, many decades, going from 1937 to 2010, and continuing with Ukrop's bakeries. And I have known Rob and his dad and family now for, I don't know, 10, 20 years. I think it goes back about that far. And we have a lot of connecting points, Rob and I. We share the same alma mater, Davidson College. I was maybe a little bit more than a decade before him, but I'd like to think that I paved the way for his illustrious career at Davidson. It's not true, but I'd like to think that. Um, and then we have had fun over the last 10 or 15 years competing against each other in many different golf matches. So we have a lot of fun together over all of those. And we decided beforehand that we're about even in terms of all of our competitions together. Not sure what the actual record is, but Rob has been, so fun to get to know, he and his wife Shannon. And over all of the golf matches, one of the things I would say is Rob probably plays golf faster than anybody I have ever known. Uh, so probably one of the first times I encountered him from the golf angle was we were both playing in a charity golf match that was raising money for Young Life here in Richmond, Virginia, and the charity was to play 100 holes of golf in one day, which is quite daunting. And it was pretty daunting for me. Um, Even more daunting as Rob was the only person in the field that actually played it on foot running the whole time and played 100 rounds, 100 holes of golf. So I didn't quite make it that way. But Rob, I'm real excited about having you as a guest for Space for Life and appreciate you coming on board.
Oh, well, first of all, thanks for having me. It's always an honor to spend a little bit of time with you in person on the golf course or by Zoom. I think that 100 hole of golf. So the first time I played with a partner that was slow, and I learned my lesson. I thought you only could play 100 holes. The first year I did it with Stuart Holt out at Richmond Country Club, and then the next year I got a faster guy. We did 162 holes, and the third year I had a donor that said, "Hey, if you can get 200 holes in, I'll give you $5 a hole." So I got the right partner and we teed off, remember, at 6:52 a.m. We finished at 6:52 p.m. We got in exactly 200 holes. It was phenomenal. We had all these little deals, you hit your shot. If you put a club back in the bag, you had to pick the next club for the next shot then. So you didn't, it saves you 3, 4, 5 seconds, but all of that adds up when you're trying to get 200 holes in. So that was my recollection of it. So
That is crazy. I actually thought I had the record. My brother Mike and I played together, and we got 120 holes in a day. And I thought we were probably the only people who ever actually went beyond 100 holes. That you got 200 holes, which is about 11 rounds of golf
yeah,
in one
the
day.
nice part is you hit the same shot over and over, right? So you get a good feel in the greens. And I mean, I told my partner, Tony Williams, I said, Tony, we're going to park as close to the green as we can. Then we're going to sprint. Don't run on the greens. Go up there and putt it in, and then walk fast and then sprint the cart. And I mean, because I think the way we did it, we each had our own cart, right? So you
Yeah.
had to drive as close as you can. And I think my favorite part, and this would be maybe a way to speed up golf, but when you caught a group, all you had to do was yell four and hit, which was amazing to me. You didn't have to wait for them to turn around or move. They knew it was coming. So that was a fun day. I remember the next morning, somebody's like, what are you going to do today? I said, I'm going to play golf again. It was great.
That's so funny. I did the same thing. I played golf the next day. One of the times playing in that 5.5 rounds, my claim to fame was each round my score got better,
Yeah.
which was kind of crazy. And the day I played afterwards, it was like I was in a zone. I didn't even have to think about what I was doing. It was just you were so comfortable over shots. So anyway, that's
Yeah.
fun thinking back on those days.
Well, I
So
mean, I think, the muscle memory, but it's a little bit like life, right? So you try and get into a habit that you go through life with, whether you wake up in the morning, like you probably hear my dogs walking around or barking at some point, but you get in this habit and it becomes muscle memory. And like I'm a creature of habit, and a lot of people tell me, well, why don't you get out of your comfort zone? But I feel like I've been out of my comfort zone a lot, but these kind of routines that I get into, like I kind of consider my walking my dogs in the morning. We've got three. One just is this forever walk, but it's kind of my gratitude walk. I'm like thinking about the things I'm thankful for, and trying to figure out how to carve out these little moments in the day that you reflect on and you think, man, I've got a pretty good life. I'm spending a little time with my dog. I would like him to poop a little faster, but I can't make that happen. So we're just going to kind of wander and wander. But I think that's how I play golf. I'm like trying to get it done so I can go do something else.
well, I mean, it's way off subject, but I couldn't agree with you more. It's like you have those foundational habits, your morning time and things. And it's not that you just want to get in a tunnel vision, but those foundations actually give you the bandwidth to then get out of your comfort zone. It's like,
Correct.
if you were constantly trying to get outside of your comfort zone, you just wouldn't have the energy or capacity. But when you have those core foundations, then it gives you kind of that bandwidth to say, okay, now I'm going to live, outrageously, kind of.
Right.
Yeah. So I love that. Well, for those who may not know you, let me give a little background of your life, and then I actually want you to not only tell your story, but a little bit of your family story, because I think it's pretty profound. So you were a graduate of Davidson College, as I've also mentioned. You had probably one of the most illustrious careers of a Davidson graduate of almost anybody outside of Steph Curry. So back in your day, you played soccer at Davidson, and in I think your final year, if I'm correct, you led the nation in scoring as a
Uh,
soccer player, which I think is pretty profound for a school as small and off the radar as Davidson was. So you were All-American in soccer, correct?
it's something like that. So that was a
Something.
long time ago. I was blessed to have a great coaching staff and great teammates. I think the story I like to share is my junior year. I got off to a good start of the season, and at one point I came back across midfield to help defend. I was a center forward, and my coach he screamed out at me. He's like, "Cropper, come here!" So I run across the field to Charlie Slagle, and he says, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm trying to help the team defend." He's like, "If you cross midfield to defend anymore, you're not going to play. I'm going to pull you out. Your job is to stay up there and score goals." So it was a singular mission. He gave it to me. I embraced it. Nobody likes to defend. At least I didn't. So it was this great blessing. So I had one job was to score goals, and thankfully I had incredible teammates that put me in good spots. And yeah, it was a fun season, that's for sure.
Yeah, man, that's so cool. And it really does highlight kind of the impact that coaches make, of which you are and have been for it seems like almost all of your adult life, and then your continued impact as owner and head of Richmond Kickers, professional soccer team here in Richmond, Virginia. And we're going to get, all into that. So that you played professional soccer, you now own and CEO of a professional soccer club here in Richmond. coach soccer. So that's been a big part of, your life. I also know you as one of the most motivational people, in and beyond the Richmond area. You've always been this just highly motivational person, just trying to lead people to more life. And I think that's so cool. Step back a ways, you come out of this really well-known, impactful, prominent family in Richmond that has done so much good. Would you just kind of step back and just share a little bit of your life story, your family story, and we'll just take off from there.
Yeah, so I know I always tell people I was born at St. Mary's, April 5th, 1970. So it was a cool day for me. My mom was telling my wife the other day at our birthday dinner that I almost strangled myself on the cord. So she said it was a hard delivery, and so I guess my dad kind of always thinks adversity is a good thing for you, right? So
You know,
um,
I had the exact same thing happen when I was born. I
did
almost
you?
strangled on umbilical cord. That's strange.
So again, I've been blessed. I've been around, my dad, Charlie Blair, Weldon Bradshaw. I mean, heck, your brother Mike, growing up, and just a lot of influential coaches and teachers and Sunday school teachers and people that, you know, told me there's a much bigger picture than just what you're doing on the athletic field or what you're doing in the classroom. That, it's a whole bigger world. I think maybe the most embarrassing thing, and I know I'm already skipping around, but that's how my brain works. I apologize. I used to at Second Baptist. We grew up at Second Baptist, and my mom, if I wanted to play sports at school, one of the rules was I had to either be in the church choir or the school choir. So at first I was in the church choir because it was just easy because I was out there and nobody at school knew I had to sing. So, I was in a couple musical productions. I think the lead in Moses and the Freedom Fanatics and the Singing Bishop. And so there's some bad video floating around of a lot of my friends that I still see today and myself singing with pre-voice change. But like all these things are kind of rooted in, being faithful, right? Being baptized when I'm a child and how that impacted the rest of my life and committing to Christ. But mom and dad and the people that I was around the most, that was the fundamental. That was David Dwight talked about it at Hope just past Sunday. That's the anchor, right?
Yeah.
The cross is the anchor. Don't just glance by it. Like, look at his face on the cross. And I think everything for me has been anchored in faith. Watching my mom and my dad, I can remember spending time with my granddad down on the family farm, and every night we'd go to bed. My granddad would get on his knees and say his prayers, and I noticed my dad did the same thing. And even today, before I go to bed each night, I get on my knees and I pray. So knowing that you're anchored in the cross and Jesus coming to save us, I think those are important things. I think Scotty Scheffler says it all the time.
Yeah.
It's not really about the golf for him, right? He's, whatever happens, he's anchored in his faith. So I feel like that's a really important piece of my life story, and having a bunch of great role models around me. So that's been an important part. But as I've gotten older, you know, you start to learn things that your mom and your dad and your grandparents have done to try and make the community stronger. And
Mhm.
you know, I think, if you talk about Davidson College, my first time ever going somewhere and somebody mispronouncing my name was my first class at Davidson, my freshman year in the fall of 1988. And they're like, Rob Ukrop. And it was the first time I got to correct somebody on my name. And, I was pretty pumped. I was like, this is great. So it was a different place where I had to make my own name, and, that's how it works. But in Richmond, we had a lot of faithful families shopping at the stores, and we were closed on Sunday. So, and there's a lot of familiarity. And I think my granddad and my grandmother and my parents have always thought, and my uncle, how do we give back to the community? Like, this is where we live. We want to make this community help thrive. And there's all these little different things that my mom and my dad and just my extended family, Uncle James and Aunt Bobby and Scott and Ted, and everybody's found a little different place to contribute. And I don't think if you add it up, some people say it's a pretty big deal. I think they're all little small things, but I find Jesus myself is in the small things, the little things that happen on a daily basis, right? Walking with your daughter, playing with your dogs. There's so many little things. And I think so many people think to make an impact on your community or make an impact in your family, you have to do something big. And it really is just take care of the little details. And I think that's an important lesson that I've learned and
Mm.
try and fulfill each day. Now, I'm not great at it. My wife reminds me, some days I'm like, I thought I was a pretty good husband, but most of the days I probably fall short. That's how it works. I try and get better every day. But it's nice to have somebody that's my partner that's challenging me to be a better person every day and helped me along the way when I need the help the most. So
Yeah. Well, your family has had a profound, I think, impact in the Richmond community in so many different ways, certainly through um, the grocery store chain, Ukrops, which it's kind of interesting. It closed on Sundays, didn't sell alcohol, and even though every other grocery store chain was open on Sundays, it was like the Chick-fil-A before Chick-fil-A uh, was around, which is amazing, and I think it created just such an immense loyalty, during all of those years in all of the Richmond community. What is neat though is I think that it went beyond just being, a substantial business. Your family seemed to be very comfortable with giving everybody in the family the permission to find their own way, and to do their own thing. And for you, that's certainly been soccer, but it's been, having influence beyond that as a speaker, motivational speaker, and the freedom to do that and the freedom to be involved in the family business, if
right.
that's the case. And I don't know, is that in the faith foundation and perhaps that freedom, is that in your mind part of why the Ukrop legacy has worked now over multiple generations when that often isn't the case?
Well, I think the lesson I learned from my dad was, he said, find something that you love to do, and it will seem like you never work a day of your life. And my dad found that with U crops, right? And even today at 78, my dad, I mean, he still works. He's not retired. I think at some point he was thinking about it, but that's what he does. He just loves being around people and trying to grow the company and build relationships and strengthen the next generation of leaders. So um, with soccer, I just assumed I was going to graduate and come back to work for dad. I can remember my senior in college, he sent me some produce books and said, "Hey, we want you to be the produce folk, kind of the family member that's focused on produce." And I was like, got these two books and I'm working on this, working through the workbook, and I'm like, this isn't super fun to me. It just didn't, it didn't seem like, I mean, I loved my family. I loved the supermarket business was fun, and it was, working a couple months each summer or when I was back home from college was one thing, but it didn't really resonate. But what did resonate for me, since my freshman year of college, my college coach Charlie, he used to ask me, he said, "Hey, can you work camps?" And I was like, "Yeah, how many weeks?" And he's like, "I don't know, the whole summer." So I would actually come home for about a month in May, and then June and July, and then early August, there was probably 8 to 10 soccer camps, sometimes two different camps a day that I would work and got to be already around young people. And it was pretty transformational for me. I did my first camp when I was in high school at Collegiate at University of Richmond with their coach. I was 18 years old, and it was fun. But when I was around Coach Slagle and how he interacted with the kids and created this belief in them, it was just something that really connected with me and felt, it was comfortable. And, looking back, there's probably a lot of signs. So people always ask me about my dad, and, they say my dad is super serious. You played golf with my dad. My dad's got a good sense of humor, and my dad is hyper competitive, like,
Yeah,
always looking for an advantage when you're playing golf. Right.
totally.
So, we played on my birthday the other day, and he's 78 years old, and I three putted the last hole to lose, and starting on the tee box, he started playing about how well I was hitting the ball and blah blah blah, and it got into my head, and he shot 78, shot his age, and beat me on April 5th. So that
Doesn't
was fun.
surprise me at all.
But one of the really cool things, and I think people don't know this, is that so my dad for 50 plus years, he's taught fifth grade Sunday school. Now it sounds like, why would Bobby Ukrop be teaching fifth grade Sunday school? And I've never really had the conversation with him about why he does it. But what I've kind of observed is that, dad, the fifth grade, that's an important group of young men and young women. And it's something that I think keeps my dad grounded, all the different things. And you've been around him and he's got 100 different things flying around his head, but he prepares on Saturday for that Sunday school class, and he goes in there and he teaches with another partner here. And it's just something that keeps him grounded, and he loves working with those fifth graders, with that 11, 12 years old, and helping get them on a path toward faith. And how did he have a positive impact? And all the successful things my dad has done, that's one of those things that keeps him grounded. And for me, my wife is like, she doesn't love when I coach club and high school at the same time because I'm not home a ton at night. And now I'm down to just high school teams. And for me, it's one of those things that keeps me grounded. And I think I learned that from my dad, just from observing. But it's nice to be around a generation, I'm coaching kids that I went to high school with their parents, and some are even younger than that. So it's been fun to be around this next generation and see if I can pass on some of the skills that I've learned from Charlie Blair and, all these other great mentors and coaches that I've had. And, one of the things that I think is missing these days with cell phones from being around the younger generation is like, there's just a lack of confidence and lack of self-belief. Everybody's tied into what it looks like on Instagram or Facebook. And hey, these pictures, did I get a like, or did I get somebody comment on it versus, like, let's be a good human being. Let's see if we can find the best version of ourselves and then contribute to make our community a little bit stronger. So it's been really fun for me to stay involved in the game through coaching. But I guess the Seeds were playing long ago. Dad used to coach we had a second Baptist church basketball team when I was a kid. And, we play at Huguenot Road and Salisbury Methodist Church, I believe it was. And we go all these places. I mean, I might be the only kid that ever got teed up in a church basketball game. Like, I'm a little bit wired too competitively at times, but all these great people that I run into now, they're like, hey, you remember playing church basketball together? And I'm like, I remember the game. I don't remember you. Right. But, sports was a really cool way to just bring people together and make community stronger. And, for kids that don't excel in the classroom or other places, this is the place where they just kind of let everything out and they compete and they have fun. And, I love watching March Madness. And, I feel like all these different sporting events are ways to bring people together, which kind of leads me my current job of the CEO, chairman of the Richmond Kickers, Richmond Ivy, is that now we have this platform here in Richmond that brings the community together. Whatever your political beliefs are, whatever your faith views are, wherever you grew up, like when you come out to City Stadium, it's your chance to root on your hometown team and celebrate with other people in the community.
Yeah, it's that's so true. And I think particularly of the word you kind of use there, it's a platform. And, I think that having something that you love to do, like soccer, or for me, it's golf or any number of things, these things become platforms for that you use to communicate who you are, for good or for bad, and some people it's not for good, but you can do something that you love, and yet even in the midst of that or through that, you mentioned Scotty Scheffler, through that you can communicate something that's much more profound about what you really care about. And your dad has done that. You've done that over all of the years. And I think it's so important for people to hear that, find something that you love, and then that can be a platform for even the deeper things of what you believe and what you care about and what you want to communicate.
Right. No, I would agree with that. I think, people ask me a lot of times about my faith journey, and I was like any other college kid. I got down to Davidson, and the question was like, my mom and dad would come down. My sister Jacqueline was a year behind me at Davidson, and they would come down and they're like, hey, whose church do you want to go to for the weekend? And I'm like, I usually just went when my mom and dad came down, and I'd go with them and my sister. We'll go to Jacqueline's church. But one of the things I used to always do when I played soccer is that pregame, I'd always just get down somewhere on the field and just say a little prayer. And it was something to the effect of, dear Lord, please let us have a wonderful game. Whoever wins, please make sure that if somebody gets hurt, let it be me. Just because I felt like, I was tough enough and I could take an injury, right? So 23 surgeries later, I'm like, man, this is one of these answered prayers. All these times I prayed that somebody would get hurt, it would actually be me. And so, 23 surgeries in. But I think the other really, the story that I do share, a little bit of my testimony is, so fast forward a bunch of years, it was right around 1995 or 96. And my granddad, my dad's dad, Joe Ukrop, he had some issues, some health issues, and he was in the hospital. And it was so bad that my uncle and my dad wrote his obituary. We had taken him off all the machines because we knew my granddad didn't want to pass away that way, but we didn't want to be alone. So based on my soccer schedule, I was free at nights in January. So I'd go in about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night and relieve my uncle or whoever was on duty. And I'd stay in the room, overnight, just in case he passed. We didn't want him to pass on his own. So it was over at St. Mary's, and I can remember getting over there, and I'd come in there and, I'd just sit there and I'd talk about the stories and the experience I had with my granddad. Cause, we're a hands-on family and we do things together, and we had lunch together every Sunday down at the farm. And he taught me how to drive the tractor, and he taught me how to work hard and swim and water ski and all these different things. And so we'd go through I just talked to him, and he's just sitting there barely breathing. And, being competitive and optimism, you talked about the motivating qualities. Like, I've always been an optimist. I get that from my dad. I always see the good in everybody. I see the good in all possibilities. This is why my golf game's not so good, because I think I can hit all the shots that I can anymore. But I'm sitting there with my granddad, and I'm like, Granddad, they keep telling me that this is it for you, that, there's no way back. But you always said, the Lord has a plan for you. When he's going to come get you, he's going to come pick you up. And I don't know that this is the night to do it. And so if you can hear me, I just need you to squeeze my hand. And I'm sitting there and nothing happens. And, every couple hours, the same routine. I hold his hand, ask him to squeeze it. So we get through the first night, and, they haven't been feeding him because, things are going south quickly. And so the next night I'm in there and I'm like, Granddad, like, I feel like you're talking with me. I know I'm doing all the talking, but this is maybe how it used to be when you talk to me and I just sit there and listen. But I feel like you're there, if you could just squeeze my hand. So I put my hand in his hand, and all of a sudden I think it was the second night, I just feel this faint little squeeze, and I'm so excited. I ring for the nurse, and she comes in, and it's like, typically in these kind of situations, it's just kind of a muscle reaction. It's not anything meaningful. I said, I know my granddad, my granddad's not ready to go. This is it. He's good. He's good. So tell my mom and dad. My mom's like, it could be, maybe, maybe not. So the next night, I'm like, Granddad, nobody believes me. This is how it works. I understand this, but if you could just squeeze my hand one more time, that'd be helpful. So I feel this really faint squeeze, and I'm like, calling the nurse, and sure enough, she's giving the same routine. I said, all right, Granddad, nobody believes me. Now I need you to blink your eye for me. So you're holding my hand, but just blink your eye. And all of a sudden you see this like faint little blink of his eye. And now I know, like, this is this, maybe it's the Jesus moment, or God speaking to you, or just the power, the presence. And, I'm saying this prayer, and I'm like, Nurse, I'm telling you, he squeezed my hand, he blinked his eye. So the next morning the doctor comes in, and I'm so excited to share all this news. And same response from the doctor that I got from the nurse. And he said, but we'll closely watch him. And so next thing you know, they realized they started to feed him a little bit. And my granddad, he came back for another 6-7 years. So
6 or 7 years?
Yeah, I think he passed away in the early 2000s. So he was, his time was not up. It was amazing.
Wow.
It's just one of those
Yeah.
moments when, so
That's amazing.
yeah, it was cool. I mean, I got to spend that moments with him, and, who knows, being optimistic,
Yeah.
sometimes it works out. It doesn't always work out that way. And most of the time it's a sad ending, but, I'm a firm believer that when you're getting called home, you're going to be called home. And there's very little you can do about it other than have your heart prepared. And, so, he came back, and it was pretty amazing. So we got some more years with him. Obviously he was a little bit slower from his health challenges, but,
Sure.
it was just a reminder for me of how important my faith was. It's easy when you're around different people or different environments. And, thankfully in the soccer world, you run into a lot of different people. You run into people that you think are faithful Christians and they're not. And then you run into people who are like, huh, I had no idea. It's just this cool journey. And, that is the one thing about sports is it brings you get to experience so many different people and
Yeah.
so many different backgrounds and learn from just different ways of life. And I think that's one of the biggest blessings for me, having this soccer experience as a professional player. And, even now working with kids and working with the pro team, we have this exceptional group of young men that, the number one question our head coach asks is, or ask him is like, what kind of human being? He's like, don't worry, that's the number one thing we look for. Like, you might be super talented, but if you're not a team player and you're not putting, the group ahead of yourself, it's probably not a good fit for you here in Richmond. So,
I love that. I love that. I mean, it's again, it's just a way that you're taking this platform and extending it, in so many different ways with, with the Richmond Kickers, but also beyond that. And I love what you were talking about with optimism, because I think optimism is something that is uh, often, I think, misunderstood. It's viewed too often, and rightfully so sometimes, as kind of just a Pollyanna attitude of not being real about things. And I think that optimism and, I guess, what I would call its companion, Christian hope, kind of go hand in hand. And, your experience with your granddad, I think, is kind of an affirmation that we can choose our perspective, how we see the circumstances of our life. And I'm with you in terms of um, believing that the choice of the will to try to look on the positive side of things um, adds so much to life, and it is so akin to hope. And I think it's an important thing that I think is often just diminished in other people's views. But yet, living and choosing to live with optimism and with hope, I think brings so much joy and, I think, impact to life.
right. Well, it's funny you say that. So my wife, she works over at Capital One and she's always talking about EQ, emotional quotient. And, most people talk about IQ. But a bunch of years ago, there's a book called The Hope Quotient. And it's a pastor out in, I believe, California. I can't think of I think his first name is Ray, but it's called The Hope Quotient. And I read it and it was really interesting to me because, to me, I'm not the smartest guy in the world. And I mean, my wife tells me I don't really have any EQ at all, but I feel like I got a lot of hope in me. And I think that's a big positive. And, like you said, I think a lot of people discount it, but, how you choose to live your life and look at the positives and, everybody. And I mean, I know in my lifetime, I hear it a lot. Well, you had an advantage from the beginning, or, you've had a successful family. And I think I always tell people, when I was a kid, I didn't know how successful my mom or my dad or the family business was. That I didn't really know. I just knew it was a supermarket. I just thought, that's what I do. I used to squeeze orange juice for $2 an hour at Patterson in 1981. So the idea of hard work and, I just didn't know any better. But my mom and dad, like, hey, this is what you want to do. You got to figure out a pathway. You have to work for it. You have to put the work in, and you have to believe. And I think with hope, one of the things, it's nice to have hope, but the other part is have people around you that believe in you. And it just takes one person that can, when you're on your own and you're always saying, I can do this, I can do this, at some point you're going to come to a point where you're like, man, this is harder than I thought. Maybe I can't do
Yeah.
this. And surrounding yourself with people that believe in you and see the good qualities in you instead of, hey, you're not good at this, you're not good at that. I think it's a great lesson in parenting. What's the balance between teaching your children the right way to do things and trying to give them some belief in that you can do this if you stick to it. And I think finding those people in your life, in your circle, makes a big difference that have hope. I
Yeah.
think that's one of the most discouraging things I see is, you know, you watch. I try not to watch too much news media because everybody's negative. Like there's a lot of cool stuff happening in the world today. Like there's so many advancements in technology and all this, but it still comes down to, do you care about people, and whether you like Trump, whether you like Obama, whether you like Biden, whatever, like, can you actually find common ground with that your neighbor, with somebody you just meet on the street? And I think the hope part is really important. And I
Yeah.
wish there were more people that, encourage people versus said discourage people.
I couldn't agree more. I don't think that I've heard, it doesn't feel like in years anybody say there's a lot of cool things going on in the world. I mean, we say exactly the opposite of it. And so I think that's such a powerful message. A common theme I'm hearing from you, and I couldn't agree more, is, you know, you've learned and you've become because your parents led by example. What they did was really kind of secondary to the lives that they led by example, which it sounds like they got from your grandparents.
Right.
And it seems like that's also become the core foundation for you. You want to have these small habits, these perspectives that allow your impact to come by the example almost over and above the words that you speak.
Right. Well, yeah, I think that's well said. As I look at, my kids are 20 and 23 right now. And, again, I, I get after them on some stuff. My wife says I'm too hard on them. But what I'm starting to figure out is that most of the things that my kids learn from me, they're just watching me, even when I didn't know they
Exactly.
were watching. And I think that's really important. Because those are what you, I don't know. When I speak, I'll often do this little game where I ask people to ask them to take their finger, put your finger and your thumb together, and then put it on your chin. And I do this, and everybody watches me, and they put it on here instead of their chin. And it's kind of a good lesson, is that people, they
Mm,
always watch what you do. They don't always hear what you say. So,
yes.
being consistent actions, those are important pieces. And, it's funny. One of the cool things with my daughter, I didn't even realize it, but when she was younger, I'd always go in at night and I'd pray over her. And I had this prayer that I'd say over her and my son every night. And then out of the blue, she was writing a paper, senior in high school, and she's like, "Hey, do you remember the prayer you used to pray?" Yeah. I mean, I still kind of do it, don't I? And she's like, "Yeah." And she remembered the prayer, and she put it into one of her papers. And I was like, "Man, I didn't know she was paying attention." I think she's like, "Just get out of my room so I can go to bed, right?" Or get out of my room so I can get on the phone. So, just being consistent and, how you interact with people. And, kids are always watching, adults are always watching, right? Because in some
Yeah.
cases, it feels like people are trying to catch you doing something wrong instead of catch you doing something good. And I think that's one thing that could improve in the world just in general. But, you know, one of the things I always love about Sunday morning going to church, I'm an eight o'clock service guy. I'm usually a few minutes late because, I don't love music that much anymore. So I try to get there right before the sermon. But just being greeted by somebody, um, there's different degrees of interaction. Some people are, they're like, "Oh, I don't know you. I'm not really going to say much." You just kind of put their hand up. But I love it when I walk into Sunday school, or I walk into a restaurant, or I walk in wherever I go, and somebody just smiles at you and greets you, and it kind of throws you off. You're like, "Man, this person's having a good day," and they're trying to to add it to mine, which is good. And I've always used the phrase "smiley is contagious." I think it goes a long way. I think not enough people do it. It's like, let's think about what's not going well versus what is going well. So, again, like I said, I'm blessed. I have a great mom and dad that have seen the good qualities and try and encourage the good qualities in me, and the things that I'm not so good at, they try and improve.
Yeah.
Even today. But yeah, it's just a blessing to walk through life and think, hey, there's some cool stuff that can happen. How can I make this little group of people that I'm in front of today? How can I add a positive to their experience in life?
Yeah, it's great. What I'm hearing kind of as a common theme in terms of what you're saying is get the small things right.
Right.
Get the small things right. Smile, do those small things right. And if you do that, then you are almost by definition leading by example. And that's where the impact really comes. And you just do the best you can to get the
Right.
small things right, day after day after day. Um,
Right.
Yeah.
No, I'll share another little story. And again, I'm not sure how we're doing on time or if I'm cutting into your questions or not, but
No, go for
um,
it.
so I'm a creature of habit. Shared. I love Outback. When I was playing professional soccer, when I was one of the veterans on the team, we always went to Outback the night before because whatever city you're in, it tastes the same, right? So one of the nice parts is my wife doesn't like Outback. I love Outback today. So for the last 10 years, she's like, where do you want to go? I'm like, let's go to Outback. And she's like, I don't like Outback. So the last couple of months, she's starting to realize Outback is consistent. It's always the same. She likes the salad, she likes the steak. So the last couple of weeks, she's like, let's go to Outback. And one of the things that's happened at Outback, I usually have a hat on, and there's this guy that works in Outback. I'm not sure exactly what his role is, but he's like, hey man, I like your hat. Just kind of a random, and every time I come in there, he's always commenting on my hat. So one day I was like, you know what? I got an extra hat. I'm going to bring him a hat. Right. So I bring a hat in there, and he comes by and he's like, hey, I like your hat, man. I said, hey, well, come find me before we leave. And he's like, all right. So at the end of the night, we're finished, we pay our meal. And I'm like, here you go. I brought you a hat. And he's like, really? And I gave him one of the hats, same hat I had on. It's just brand new. I had it. And so the next time we come in, he's like, he's smiling, and we're learning a little about his life story. And he's become, an acquaintance, that somebody that, he's working in Outback. He's, putting his way through school. He's doing the little things, but
Hmm.
his attitude is infectious. And then you see these other people that are just trying to serve you and get out of there. And he's just building relationships. And we went in the other night, and he waited on our table and just asked us questions. And I gave him some tickets to the Kickers game, and he came out. And it's just, you just never know where people are. And it's just fun. And I guess reminds me there's a bunch of young people out there that have this hope and have this optimism. They're gonna make their world a better place. And it's just nice to run into some of these people. And little things do mean a lot. I think about, I had an extra hat. I mean, I usually buy things in bulk. I buy two or three if I find something I like. That's just the way I learned from my dad when I was a kid. But just passing it on, I think it's a good lesson for people. And I'm just thankful that I have the opportunity to pass some little kindness and some little funds as life goes around me. So it's been fun.
Man, I love that. I love that. Well, I'm going to kind of use that to segue to one thing that I saw just as I was kind of I've known you for a long time, but then when you do a podcast, you kind of go, well, I kind of need to get refreshed background and stuff. And so I went to your LinkedIn page, and plastered across the back of your profile is what was just like very apparent as kind of a mission statement, and it reflects exactly kind of the things that you've talked about. And I love this. And I've had, a lot of episodes, even recently, on the value of coming up with a mission statement, a purpose statement. Michael Thaler just recently, was on the podcast talking about all of this. But yours says to strengthen community connections by curating a joyful, authentic soccer experience in Richmond, Virginia. And I
Right.
love that because you've got your place in Richmond, Virginia. You've got your platform, this soccer experience, but the mission to strengthen community connections by curating a joyful, authentic soccer experience. So I love that. So I'd love to just hear, where did that come from and how does that impact what you do?
So the original group, our investor group, is called 22 Holdings. And so my senior year in college in 1992, December, we made it to the Final Four, which Davidson hosted in. There's a guy named Alex Giannis that wrote for the New York Times, and he came down to interview us. And he wrote an article in New York Times saying 22 educated feet. So that's where the name 22 Holdings comes from. And it was funny because we didn't use educated because we're athletes and we weren't the best students. We had a couple of smart guys, but the core group, there was five of us. 22 Holdings, that's where that came from. But when we're trying to figure out what our mission statement really was, I'm joyful is my word. Another guy really is authentic is important to him, and then community connection. That was how we all operated. That's how we believe in all of our different communities. They live across the country, but we put it together and we kind of let it soak and we thought on it. And the word curating came in because Richmond's got incredible museums, right? The
Mhm.
Science Museum, you've got their the History Culture Museum, you've got, I mean, You
Yeah.
got all kinds of different
Amazing.
museums, right? Fine Arts of Virginia. Then you have the Holocaust Museum. So you have all these museums. So the word curating is just something that we felt like was clever and very Richmondy. Richmond's a cool city that people don't even know some of the neat things that we have going on. So that's where the curating came from. But using soccer is really that platform to bring people together. We have a 40-year lease with City Stadium, and we put about $4.5 million in the City Stadium over the last 5 years. We're well ahead of the schedule that the city provided. And for us, we do anywhere from, we do marathon training, do happy hours, we do movie nights, we do all kinds of different things. We've done a couple years in a row, we did 200 plus events out there. We trended this year, we're about 165 to 70. We need to protect the field a little bit better than we have in the past, but we want to make sure that Richmond is this community hub at City Stadium that they can come, and there's all kinds of different reasons to be there, whether it's a YMCA Healthy Kids Day, whether it's a soccer clinic, whether it's a construction rodeo where all the construction folks around town come in and show off their big equipment while sharing some cocktails. So we want to make sure it's this place where Richmond can come from around the region and be together. And then for us, really soccer is the main platform. So we'll have 19 Richmond Kickers games this year. We'll have 6 Richmond Ivy games this year, which is our women's team. So we're just trying to get people into the stadium and realize that, whatever's going on in your life, we're an option to come and share community and just do community with people. When I used to play back in the early 90s at City Stadium, it was a white suburbia out there. If you came out to a game now, it is so diverse. It's such a great snapshot of what the Richmond of the 2025 looks like. So we're really blessed to have such a great, well diversified fan base. And not everybody loves all the things that we celebrate out there, but that's okay. We want to make sure that everybody in Richmond feels like they have a place where that's safe, that they can come out and forget all the other things out there in their life, but they can grab something to drink, grab something from the food trucks we have out here, and cheer on your local team and make a new friend. You just never know. Sports has been good to me, to have just this incredible friend group around the country. It seems like through LinkedIn and social media, just people I haven't heard from in many years can just reach out, on a whim and say, hey, how you doing? And it's nice. I'm not sure if Dr. Tomazu was a professor down at Davidson when you were there, but I sent him an email this morning because I was dealing with another classics professor, and I just sent him a note today. And out of the blue, Dr. Michael Tomazu called me this morning. I hadn't heard from him in 30 years, and just say, I just want to check in on you. Like you talk about community, like that's the nice part about Davidson, but here in Richmond, it's the same thing. There's people that care about you. They come out to the games. One of the things that we ask our staff to do when games are over for the Ivy and the Kickers is we wait by the gates and you thank people and just say, thanks for coming, give them a fist bump. Some people want to get a photo, but I think the authentic part is really important. Joyful is you come into every game joyful, right? Because you're hopeful. And then sometimes you lose, sometimes you draw, sometimes the fans are unhappy. So they're going to walk out not joyful, but you want to make sure that you're thankful for them. And that's one of the great things is, I talked about kind of a gratitude walk in the mornings, but at night when people leave, we've had a rough couple seasons last year and a couple of nasty fans. I don't say nasty, but unhappy with the results and fire the coach, sell the team. You stink as an owner. Like it's very humbling. Like I love to know how people feel. It's better to hear it from them right to my face versus somebody hiding behind a blog or something else. So, really we want to make this, strengthen these community connections. What we're starting to see is some of these people that, didn't really understand what we were trying to do on the soccer field. Obviously we want to win, but we're trying to develop young Richmond players and showcase them so that we can sell them on to Europe at some point. So it's fun to watch the path and the growth, but I think that you've stated the mission statement, but the tagline for us is really joyful, authentic, united. I think that sums it up. Let's be joyful, let's be who we are, and then let's unite people. And that's what sports really does, whether it's basketball, soccer, golf. I mean, I was amazed at how many people watch golf this weekend. I have random people that don't really like golf are like, man, that was just epic TV. And I was like, yeah, I mean, it's what it does. It's just things that people are unhappy with what's happening in the world today. Let's spend 2 hours watching a golf broadcast and very few commercials, which we appreciate the Masters for.
Yeah.
But this epic ending, like Justin Rose, who's maybe best mates with Rory, was hugging at the end, and like Justin Rose wanted to win more than anybody, and I think his words were, I wanted to be the bad guy today, but what just happened? This is an incredible story for the game of golf. Like, how humbling is that? Like, you
Yeah.
just lost one of your closest friends, and you're taking it like this is good for all of us, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Uh, Joyful,
Joyful, authentic,
authentic,
united.
united. That's great. And I know you and your family are such competitive people, and often competitive people aren't very good losers. But every time, whether it's with you or with your dad, whatever the matches turned out, I mean, we just were having a blast together in terms of it. So I really appreciate that. Well, your family, I think, has been so impactful for Richmond and continues to be impactful. And you're carrying on through soccer the legacy of your family through the grocery store industry. And I think that's so profound. Um, as we kind of wrap up, I want to kind of make sure that people, particularly in this Richmond area, who may not have connected in with kind of this really cool thing going on with the Richmond Kickers, know how to connect either with you or just kind of with what you're about. So, um, how do people find out what the schedule is? And I'm sure
Yes,
it's
so just visit richmondkickers.com.
okay.
If you want to email me directly, it's rukrop@richmondkickers.com. Pretty simple. I try and answer all my emails myself. I don't have an assistant. Maybe my wife, I asked her to help me from time to time, and she's like, I'm happy to run things, but I'm not going to be your assistant. It's how it works in our house. So she's the smart of the two of us.
Yeah,
I'm probably the one that gives
probably
away the
wise.
farm, but if you want to come out to a game, just shoot me an email, and I'm happy to send anybody one ticket to try it out. Maybe they'll buy a second ticket for somebody else. But once you come out, it's different. We've had a lot of people over the last couple of months, and we've had a good start to the season. We're in second or third place right now. We've got 3 wins, 3 losses, but we have a young team. We actually, I mentioned earlier, but we have currently we're starting a 19-year-old that went to Maggie Walker, an 18-year-old that went to Trinity. We have a 19-year-old that went to Glen Allen, a 17-year-old that went to Matoka. They're all on professional contracts here, and we've got Josh Kirkland who went to Deep Run, who's starting to get some significant minutes. So we have a lot of local flavor, and I think one of the challenges with sports and with this NIL in the college game is like these guys come in for a year and they leave. Like we're trying to invest in our community. We want to give opportunities to Richmonders. Now our roster has got a world flair to it, but we really want to give opportunities to young Richmonders if they want to chase their pro soccer dream. This is a viable pathway for them. So, when I was a kid,
Cool.
you were a kid, you probably read the sports page I used to read with my dad, and I loved in baseball or basketball or NFL. In the parentheses, it told them where that kid went to high school, right? Justin
Yeah.
Verlander, Goochland High School, and all those little things made a difference in terms of I'd cheer for them. Like I still had my team, but I would cheer for individuals because of their connection to the Richmond area. So we're trying to invest back in Richmond and give opportunities. I think that's the most important thing. So
Yeah, man, that's great. Well, this is so cool. So richmondkickers.com. If you were to leave kind of one last thought for people who are listening, a word of advice or word that you try to live by, what would that be?
I think it's just be kind. It's easy to say, like people are like, man, you're always so upbeat. And then I come home and my wife's like, why are you so mean? Why are you in such a bad mood? I'm like, when you're out and about, it's easy to, you wear how you feel, right? I try and project that life is great, and it is, but like everybody else, I know I have my own personal challenges, things that are frustrating, they're making my life difficult. But I think at the same time, be kind because you don't know what somebody's going through.
Yeah.
Life can be cruel, and like I said, the Lord has a bigger plan for all of us. We don't always agree with it or how it plays out, but you don't know what somebody's going through. So sharing a smile, you never know what a lift that gives somebody, or just a fist bump up. My wife's a big hugger. I'm not a hugger really. But just that little contact with somebody, I had the fortune to play in a first tee golf tournament yesterday, and like in my foursome, there's some guys that I know really well and a couple guys that I don't know well. It's just nice to listen to other people's stories. And I think just take the time to get to know people. Don't make that quick judgment based on, oh, well, he's always bubbly and happy. That doesn't mean he's always happy. That just means right now he's trying to project and help encourage other people around him. So I think, being kind it goes a long way. And,
Yep.
really, I've always said smiles are contagious. It makes a difference.
Smiles are contagious. That's great. Well, hey, thanks so much for just sharing, all of the different things. And thanks so much for, what you do for Richmond and for the community and beyond and through soccer. It's huge. It's an impact. And it's also just a good life. Yeah. So
No.
yeah, thanks so much for all of that, and look forward to getting another round of golf in sometime. I
Yeah,
hear
let's go
you're
out
playing
and
as
play
much,
sometime. I'd
so
love to.
yeah, I got to catch you when you're not playing as much.
Yeah, well, this is a good time to catch me right now. So yeah, I would love to go out and my favorite place to play at Kanawha.
Oh,
Well, I'll share one more quick story, but last time I played up in the mountains, I went up there in November and it was 3:15. It was getting starting to get dark, and I went in. I'm like, hey, I'd like to go play some holes. And I said, Mr. Ukrop, how many holes do you think you can get in? And I said, I don't know. You think you can get in nine? I said, probably. So they charged me for a 9-hole cart, and then maybe I shouldn't put this out there. So I walk over and I get my cart, and the guy goes, I said, hey, how many holes do you think I could get in? He's like, well, let's see, it's 3:15. If you get 10 or 11, I'd be surprised. I said, challenge accepted. I'll be back within 2 hours with 36 holes played. So got in my cart. I hit the Sneed. 1 hour, 52 minutes, 17 seconds. I think I shot 76, 74. I got around 36 holes. It was great. So
oh, that
that's
is
my
so
idea around.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember at the Sneed, we ran into each other one time, and Shannon was with you, and I had to actually adjust the way I play because most of the time people take 10 or 15 seconds before they hit the ball, or 30 seconds. You take about 2 seconds, so I had to make sure I actually stopped because you hit the ball so quickly. So,
Well, I caught these guys on the 18th tee. I parked the car, I slammed on the brakes, I sprinted, put it in there. Hey man, take your time. I said, no, this is how I play. And then I probably hit my best drive of the day and then sprinted back to the cart, and it was great. So it's
that's
I don't
great.
know, it's the only way I know how to play these days. So anyway,
A
but
lot of
thanks for
fun.
your time today, and thanks for letting me come on and chat with you. It's
Yeah.
great to see you, and I appreciate all that you do for the community quietly and keeping people moving in the right direction. So it's appreciated.
Thanks so much, Rob. Great.
Take care.
Be back next week, everybody, on Space for Life. And thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it.